In answer to that voice from above, a power within Savitri answers, "Speak to my depths, O great and depthless voice, command, for I am here to do thy will." She has moved far from her original position of saying why she should do anything. Then the voice replied, "Remember why thou camest, why thou camest to this earth. Find out thy soul, recover thy hid self. It is only by going to the depths of the soul, by plumbing into the hidden depths of the self, that one can remember the purpose for which one has really taken birth. That is why it says, find out thy soul, recover thy hid self. Note the distinction between the soul and the self. The self is that I wouldn't say element, a portion, that element in us which is watching, which is supporting, which is a witness, which does not change, which is immutable, which is not involved in the movement of evolution. The soul is, as it were, a projection of the self into this movement of evolution and growth. The soul progresses. The soul goes on adding dimension after dimension. But the self is changeless, eternal, standing behind. That is why hid self. The soul is not hid. The soul is veiled. Find out thy soul, recover thy hid self. In silence, seek God's meaning in thy depths. One can know and seek and discover the meaning only in silence. As long as the turmoil of thoughts in the mind goes on, as long as this movement of turbid emotions goes on, one cannot hear, one cannot get at the meaning of life, God's meaning. We can impute any meaning to our life, but that may not be the God's meaning in putting us to birth. In silence, seek God's meaning in thy depths. It won't be in the mind, it won't be in the emotional being, it won't be in the vital, but in the depths of the psychic. After finding out the soul, recovering the link with the hidden self, seeking God's meaning, then mortal nature change to the divine. Change mortal nature, human nature to divine nature. There are many steps. It cannot be done at one bound. Every step has to be done in its regular procedural order. Open God's door, enter into His trance. God's door is sealed inside. That has to be opened by aspiration, appropriate concentration, prayer, evocation, constantly knocking, and the door opens. Enter into His trance, trance of God, that gathered consciousness, lost in its own knowledge. Enter, only then will you know the meaning. You will have the capacity to change mortal nature into the divine nature. Cast thought from thee, he explicates. After saying that, he explains how it is to be done. He says, cast thought from thee, that nimble ape of light, that clever, agile imitator of light, which is thought. Thought pretends to be light. Thought pretends to illumine. It is an imitator. Thought is not a creator. Thought cannot arrive at knowledge. Thought can only reflect knowledge. Thought can only open a passage to knowledge. So he says, cast thought from thee, that nimble ape of light. In his tremendous hush, stilling the brain, in the hush of God, in that silence, the brain is stilled. The activity and the movement of brain falls silent. Such is the tremendous hush, not achieved by human effort, but it is His tremendous hush, stilling thy brain, His vast truth wake within, and know and see. His truth is there. Awaken it. Knock at its doors. It's not enough to awaken it. Know it. And then see it. To know is different from seeing. Knowing can be understanding. Seeing is beholding. Knowledge is implicit. Knowledge is implicit in sight. That is why drishti in the Vedas is considered to be higher than hearing. It is a further step. And then see. Within and know and see. Cast from thee sense that veils thy spirit's sight. He says, know and see. Now to see that What is it that stands in your way? Says sense. The sense faculties, in their movement, in their reports, in their operation, they curtain, they veil the sight of the soul. In the enormous emptiness of thy mind, when thought is cast away, when the brain is stilled in the hush of God, there is an enormous emptiness, void of the mind. In that, thou shalt see the Eternal's body in the world. Not Eternal's body in the heavens, but here in this world, thou shalt behold the Eternal's body. Know Him in every voice heard by thy soul, every sound, every report that comes to thy soul, thou wilt recognize Him. You will recall Sri Aurobindo's sonnet that we read once, divine hearing. How every hearing you greet the Lord, you greet the One. So, in the enormous emptiness of thy mind, thou shalt see the Eternal's body in the world. Know Him in every voice heard by thy soul, not by the physical ear, because that is sense ear, but there is an inner hearing, there is a subtler hearing by which the physical ear hears. In the world's contacts, meet His single touch. Every impact, every contact in the world and the creatures of the world, thou shalt meet His single touch. The multiple contacts of the world will only bring home to thee the single touch of Him. All things shall fold thee into His embrace, so comprehensive that everything will tend to hold thee in the embrace of God. Everything will become an instrument to clasp you to God. Conquer thy heart's throbs. Let thy heart beat in God. The heart throbs as long as it functions at the level of life, prana, as long as it throbs for others, feelings, emotions, attachments, they are related to everybody else. But when you conquer, then thy heart shall beat in God. Every heartbeat will be the beat of God. Thy nature shall be the engine of His works, instrument. Thy voice shall house the mightiness of His word, the potent sound, the creative sound from which all is created. That shall dwell in thy voice. Then shalt thou harbour my force and conquer death. The higher being, the higher self of Savitri tells the human self, then shalt thou harbour my force when you do all these things, and then conquer death. That's the direction given by the higher self. When the voice ceases, then Savitri, by her doomed husband sat. She just sits quietly, still rigid in her golden motionless pose, a statue of the fire of the inner sun. She had become that rigid statue, golden statue-like, when the voice started coming. Now though the voice has stopped, she still held in that statuesque pose, poise, a statue of fire of the inner sun, the sun of the soul. In the black night, the wrath of storm swept by. Outside, there is a storm which is angry, which is sweeping by in the skies. The thunder crashed above her. The rain hissed. Its million footsteps pattered on the roof. Each drop of rain, it feels as if it is a footstep, and there are a million footsteps, countless. Impassive, mid the movement and the cry, in all this movement, in all this cry of thunder and storm, she is impassive. She has been put in such a state, impassive, mid the movement and the cry, witness of the thoughts of mind, the moods of life. She looked into herself and sought for her soul. Because the order has been to find out thy soul. So as she returns to the normal consciousness, she is a witness of the thoughts of the mind, witness of the moods of life, of her emotional being, and she looks into herself, searching for the soul. And as she looks into herself, she sees a whole panorama of all that has happened in the cosmos. The earth, a dream, it was like a dream. She didn't think, she didn't imagine, she didn't think of it. But it was just revealed to her. A dream disclosed to her the cosmic past, the crypt seed, the condensed seed of everything, and the mystic origins, the origins of this cosmos are not physical, are not analyzable by the mind. So to indicate that, the poet says, the crypt seed and the mystic origins, the shadowy beginnings of world fate. It was there that the world fate began to unroll itself. A lamp of and there was a light that showed her all that past, a lamp of symbol. It was all symbolic. Symbolic images flit across her mind. A lamp of symbol, lighting hidden truth, imaged to her the world's significance. That the world has a meaning, the world has a significance, and that was put in sort of images that flit across the screen of her mind, screen of her being. Then he begins how? What were the origins? What were the beginnings? He describes poetically, don't take it literally, but poetically. in the indeterminate formlessness of self. Originally, there was the self without form. There was no form. Form comes out of formlessness. And that formlessness was indeterminate. It could not be defined. It could not be determined that it is this way or that way, this direction, your direction. It could not be expressed in any human language or mental term. In the indeterminate formlessness of self, that was the original state, creation took its first mysterious steps. From there emerges the creation in a mysterious movement. It made the body shape a house of soul. The soul that emerges needs a house to dwell, and the shape of the body is made a dwelling place for the soul. And matter learned to think, and the person grew. It was because of this indweller, the soul that lives within, that the capacity to think forms itself from matter, and the soul, the personality of the soul grows. She saw Savitri, she saw space peopled with the seeds of life. Seeds of life. Everywhere there were seeds which erupt into life, and saw the human creature born in time. At first appeared, he sums up the whole process, and again now he goes into detail. That was typically his style. At first appeared a dim, half-neutral tide of being emerging out of infinite naught. At first there is only a nothing. Nothing does not mean a zero. Nothing means, in this philosophy, something which exceeds anything, exceeds determination. Nothing. It is not. You can't define it, and it is infinite, vast. Out of that, a half-neutral tide of being appears dimly. There is a hesitating emergence of a being which has no special liking or preference. Half-neutral, not fully neutral. Tide, it is like an ocean tide emerging, and a consciousness looked at the inconscient vast. All was an inconscient vast. Apraketam salilam in the Veda, and there it is a consciousness. That half neutral tide, that becomes consciousness, awareness, chit. And that looked at the inconscient vast, and as a result of that look, of that gaze, and pleasure and pain stirred in the insensible void. Till then, in that inconscience, everything was insensible, insentient. There was no sensation. But as a result of that gaze of consciousness from above, pleasure and pain, the dualities start stirring, vibrating, and still all was the deed of a blind world energy. A world energy starts vibrating, Unconscious of her own exploits, she worked, shaping a universe out of the inane, out of the formless, out of the shapeless existence. This energy, world energy, not conscious of what she is doing, she shapes a universe out of a stuff that has no shape. In fragmentary beings, she grew aware. The world energy slowly becomes aware in little fragmentary beings. Not human beings, but plants, creatures, everywhere, small fragmentary beings. A chaos of little sensibilities. In every fragmentary being there was a sensation. And still now there is no order. So they are all pell-mell. And a chaos of little sensibilities. Little sensibilities, they are not fully formed. They come and die, they come and disappear. And they lack chaos. It is not an organized order. Gathered round a small ego's pinpoint head. Now here is a great philosophy. These little sensibilities, they gather round a small pinpoint, like a head of a pin, which is the ego. Ego has just started. Now, it is nature's way of organizing all movements in each being, in each creature, in each form. In this world of flux, where everything is flowing like an ocean, where million forces clash, where million sensibilities crowd, nature gathers certain sensibilities in each form around a microscopic point. And that is the point that slowly develops later into what we call the ego. Now, in this sense, ego has been a deliberate creation of nature to coordinate, to stabilize and centralize a movement of experience, sensibilities, which would just petter away otherwise. They are all cohered, woven round a centralizing point. That is the ego. And that answers to Sri Aurobindo's observation, ego was the helper of nature in evolution. Because of the functioning of this ego, individuality developed. Each form became an individual. And it is only when the human being comes that this ego develops into a force for separation. Separation from everything else. I am separate, you are separate. So ego becomes a force for division. When the ego, which served its role as a centralizing agent, oversteps its limits and becomes a factor for division, the ego has to be cast away. That is why he says, ego was the helper, ego is the bar. So, when the human being awakes, becomes self-conscious, it is in the human being that consciousness becomes self-aware. That's the time when the ego has to be curbed, thinned out, discarded. Only when the ego is discarded, can the true individual take its place? We have digressed, perhaps necessarily. A chaos of little sensibilities gathered round a small ego point's head. In it, in this pinpoint head of ego, a sentient creature found its poise. It could stabilize, it could hold itself. It moved and lived a breathing, thinking whole. Each form acquired an individuality, became a thinking whole, a breathing whole, and moved into experience of life because of this pinpoint head of ego. I think we should stop that.